This is designed, again, for you to be in some mode of introspection and reflection and curiosity towards you then being a curator, okay? Some of the work that we're doing in addition to this is this kind of orientates you to what you could begin to do or think about yourself, and then maybe how you invite others into the conversation. The hope was that pastors, practitioners, leaders like yourself would be encouraged, further empowered, share your enthusiasm, and engage others in some mode of conversation and interaction with this, and that eventually you could invite others and just kind of have a rippling effect. And so if you need additional resources, there is a kind of an accompaniment that can help you with if you're doing a small Bible study or just a group kind of conversation. If you don't want everybody to read the book, or you know they won't, I mean, I don't know about your congregation. I mean, it's hard enough to read the Bible. But you can, I guess y'all didn't laugh at that one either. I'll keep it moving. Say, that ain't funny now. Now you're getting personal. But there's resources to help you kind of talk this through your congregation. Additionally, there's video resources and the alike that you can use. So if you're not comfortable, or you want to, treat them like your young grandchildren or children, and just sit them in front of the TV and hit play, they have that kind of thing that can help facilitate or at least prompt the conversation and let people go. So this is, I'm not trying to sell you more stuff, but the idea really is this was supposed to help you begin the process of helping, encouraging, and engaging others. Okay, whether that's in language or in framing or in ideas to do so. So in this book, when you read, there's literally a section that talks about how do you do something similar to this at a small or a large scale. I'm bad because I just don't want to just do a workshop with you. I think we have enough cookie cutter, 3-step recipe stuff. You're intelligent, you're trained, you're gifted, you've been ordained, you get paid, you might as well do the job. Take the authority. But you'll see some of these questions, like I said, on page 42. Basically, I took you this morning through the first chapter of the book about acknowledge. And so for everyone, again, very simply, your task as empathic models of transformation, or EMTs. That's what the acronym, I'm sure I didn't spell it out for you. I was trying to see if somebody might actually go in their book and look to see the definition and all that stuff, but in case you didn't, that's what it means, empathic models of transformation. There's a difference between being sympathetic and being empathic, or having empathy, okay? Most of us, and in our churches, and maybe somewhat in our pastoral care, are very sympathetic. That's what happens at funerals. When people give you a card and they say something nice and they make the dish that you didn't ask for. Nobody ever makes a favorite cake when somebody dies. They just make the stuff that they make. I've never gotten red velvet cake. It's one of my favorite cakes. Say, when I die, I'll get it. I got greater expectation than that. I'm expecting a major banquet on the other side of through. But that idea of, okay, I feel for you. I respect what you're going through is an element, but then there's something more. And so a lot of the phrasing that you've heard me use today, or you'll see in our writing and our work, points to this idea of doing life together, or struggling or striving. You don't have to go and experience to the nth degree everyone's story or situation personally, but you should be in a position where you are willing and wanting and open to allowing not only people to share their story, not only to allow people to claim and name their own experiences, but then you would be willing enough, able enough, open enough to, once they have invited you or extended an invitation, or they've expressed in some shape, form, or fashion a need, the way we do ministry in the realest and most authentic way is with people, not to people, and not forever for people. So I know I got a little bit off track. Doesn't take much for me to do that, but that's what I was trying to explain before lunch about kind of my parenting moment around allowing people to call out or be responsible for some of their own growth and maturation and even their celebration. That what does it mean for us to do this together instead of, Pastor, what are we going to do about such and such? That's a possessive, that's a plural pronoun, we. But anybody ever feel like in your ministry that we means me? If you're the only person going to bed at night worrying about what's happening at the church, healthily, spiritually, in a healthy way, spiritually and otherwise, not just who left on, who didn't put the alarm on, that's a problem. If everybody else is cool, because, we got enough folk here and we're doing enough ministry, and you're the only person saying, let's go this way, that's not cool. And if it doesn't feel good, it's all right not to feel good. It's not all right to stay not feeling good. So we want to, in this next part, go from acknowledging, and hopefully you have, in your own way, have talked about what's not right in your community or what's not happening in loving and just and ethical ways. Acknowledgement is about us opening our eyes beyond our sight line. It's about us also opening or availing all of our senses, particularly our hearing, to what is happening around us or to the people that we're with, and our willingness and wanting to, as necessary, be present, be participatory, be promise-seeking with them as we move through this. So when you do ministry, if ministry just makes you feel good, I personally, as I teach and as I do ministry, that doesn't sit well with me. If you feel accomplished when you do ministry, meaning, look at the good thing that we did today. When I have members come to me and say, we sure did help those people. Or when they go around talking about how many book bags they gave and kids still can't read. It's not an accomplishment to give a kid a book bag to start school. Did they finish school? And when they finish school, is there somewhere for them to go to continue their education? Not in questioning you, I'm practicing my sermon for Sunday in my place. So we want to move from acknowledgement, and of course you're signing up at some point because you got the book. It's not my fault. Your bishop signed you up to be EMTs. It means you're going to be willing to labor in some love and in some ethical way with people. Actually, you signed up before even this class or this workshop, because when you said basically I do or here I am to God in your call, that's what you signed up for. Jesus did not do remote ministry. Jesus delegated some of the work, but Jesus was also very present with people. Matter of fact, that was half the problem, because some folk just didn't understand why, he was hanging out with the people who don't never come to church most of the time. I'm sorry, I have a very unique Christology. Some of y'all looking at me, there are some Bible verses where Jesus goes in the red light district. So if you see me at the, I can't believe you went to Vegas. Well, yeah. Bright lights, lots of people. Need church. No. Plus free hotel stay. You're laughing because you know how you get them. You play, don't you? No, anyway. So But that's the nature of ministry, to be engaged. Ministry, just like worship, is participatory. Matter of fact, it's a contact sport. And if you don't have touch point with things and places and people in your ministry context, I'm not talking about your parishioners. Today, I want you to hear this. Your church is going to be all right. It was there before most of y'all got there. And most of them can't wait till you leave. Church is going to be all right. I will challenge you though. I believe we grow church from the inside out, because you can only get so many people to get attached to you. You can only handle so many relationships. But it is what we create and nurture inside that when we invite people from outside, they come and they don't retract, or what's the word I'm looking for? Retreat. And so there's this, you're kind of this unique intercessor and intermediary. And again, you're helping to transport someone who's hurting to a place or to a point or in relationship to where there's help and hope. So let's see, do I have this? Cool. Am I close to touching this, or I need some help today? Let's see. Okay, I'm sorry. I told you I'm not that smart. You could probably tell by my...
Is it on the side?
Well, that would probably help. That's owner-operator. Hey! Okay. Eureka! There's a guy in me to help me with this. We're going to bypass this idea of intersectionality, because y'all already told me y'all milk. We're not going to do an elevator speech right now. Oh, this is way past. Wow. So we talked about story. Y'all talked about, okay, this is a short version. All right. Two things. You're going to have to work with each other for a second. We talked about story. How many actually asked some questions from the card? Be honest. Okay, that's what I figured. Dude, you said lunch. You didn't say. It's okay. It's okay. There's two things that I did want you to accomplish, and it's not necessarily on the card. It's okay. If you want to see those questions, I believe most of them, some of them on page 42. They're good prompts. But you have a story. You've listened to someone's story. What is a biblical narrative, a story that applies to some hurt that you see in your space, in your community, maybe in a particular parishioner's life right now? Because one of the areas that we talk about is not only acknowledge, but affirm, or affirmation. The process of affirming. We say this about affirmation. Affirmation is not total and absolute agreement. It's not absolute alignment. And sometimes we try, and we are in situations where we navigate and negotiate to be with people who are like us. Whatever us is and whatever it means. Someone shared with me an instant observation, and it's not a one-to-one at every table. Matter of fact, now that y'all sat down, it doesn't look as bad at a couple of tables. But someone asked me to challenge me and said, do you notice that most of the tables have at least just one woman? I don't know why that is. I thought it was a cool little observation at the time. Now I feel uncomfortable and awkward about it. It's like, no, we're not. We've got two. We got two, and no, we're not. We're all guys. Welcome to the affirmative action. Yeah. Affirming and affirmative action are different. Well, we got one. We got two. Or we sit around the table and say, we need one of those. And that can be anything. We do that with our young people in church because that's what the discipline and the structure says. We got to have somebody that's younger than all of us. When I first met my wife, I met her, she was not a member of my church. You say, thank goodness, yeah. Yeah, I'm a pastor, but I'm a sheep in another pasture. I'm a shepherd, but shepherd don't say. Anyway, I was invited early on to go preach at a church that my wife was attending. I was invited to come on their youth Sunday because I looked more youthful then than I do now. And in this small church, named after an iconic figure in the United Methodist movement for black people, even though he had, carried a slave around with him. Anyway, I'll let you do your church history on that one. I go there, Bishop, and it's Youth Sunday, and I'm looking around because I see no kids. My wife and her sister, my now wife and her sister, were the lay leaders or the worship leaders for that Sunday, and they were the youngest of the bunch, well into their late 20s. Well, sorry. That's young for young adult. That's not Youth Sunday, according to the federal government. I thought all that to say was that their idea, and they would get excited. I would keep going to this church because I wanted to be supportive of what would then soon be my wife at some point. And they used to have this thing, because she was over it, where they had children's time. And some Sundays, there were literally no children. I know what children look like, because I got children. And they don't look like they're 20 yet, or 30, or whatever. And so she would put me on the spot sometimes when she'd come out and do her little thing, and she'd say, Reverend Johnson. I'm looking around like, why are you calling me? Whatever the question was. But they were okay because this was the response in the church. We have young people because Christina and Candace are here. And they were so excited because they did everything right. They raised them up in the church. They went off to one of our United Methodist schools. Matter of fact, my wife's a graduate of Russ College, which is a historical black college in some awful place in Mississippi on the other side of Memphis. You're taping this, aren't you? Yeah. Here goes my son's scholarship opportunity. But anyway, and then they did what good Methodists do. They came home and got jobs and came back to the old church. And they were happy because they had two. We can't be happy with that. The problem is, and I use this story, it's a little long-winded, but I use this story, like all my stories. I use this story because what they did not do was affirm them. They just graduated them and treated them like they were the youngest people in the congregation because they had two, or we got one of them. Affirmation moves us to a place and a responsibility that's much greater. It's about how we allow people to be named and how they claim their space and how they participate in ways that are healthy, not only to them, but to the community. And so this is one of the reasons I asked you, one, to identify in your own space, what's a story? What's a way that you can begin to tell a story? Because the only way that I can help the congregation, and matter of fact, I'm gonna tell you how conditioned my wife and sister-in-law were. They did not realize how, in my opinion, they were being leveraged or misused or abused by this loving church. They didn't realize how, because they had the youngest legs and the youngest heart, why they were the ones that were told to run and carry everything. And they were made to feel guilty when they said, I don't really want to. I don't want to preach every youth Sunday to no youth. Matter of fact, I don't have a call to ministry like that, I don't think. I'm called, as my wife is, called to education. And just because I can walk and chew gum and write a good story and recite it doesn't mean I want to preach every Sunday to give whoever else a break. How are we affirming people? Not just allowing them to be at the table, not just giving them a position, but how are we telling their story or letting them see themselves to develop and further claim their story? I had to help them, and my wife discovered it in a healthy way through Bible study. I said, go and read this story. Go and look at this situation. And there's some stories in the Bible about what does it mean to do or be called in a particular way. And it's okay if I do this work and somebody else does this other work. Or what does it mean about my youth? I never understood about 2 Timothy? Is it 2 Timothy? 1 Timothy, something about don't let them despise your youth. One of them Timothys. It's okay to take out your phone and Google. So I want you to think about, we won't do it today because we got to push, but I want you to think about a story. That's one of the assignments I want you to do. Think about a story that could speak to someone's story either you heard today or that you know of. Similar to what I did with Don before, Brother Don before the break, okay? Affirmation. Turn with me very quickly to page 47, chapter 4. Let's do some work together. I talked about opening your senses. I know I gave you a lot. Let me break it down back to you. I know I talked about you availing your senses. The first one, acknowledge, you had to see. Acknowledge requires you, and affirmation requires you to listen. We use the idea, the concept of hollering, because in Ferguson, people did not realize something was not right until people started hollering.
Yeah, right.
All right. Martin Luther King Jr. says that riot is the voice of the oppressed. For those of you that may not understand, and I don't necessarily subscribe to it as a personal practice, but I need you to understand something. There's a reason why people do what they do, whether you understand it or not. And there's a reason why some people go to the extremes that they go to, right or wrong, but all of it is fundamentally for the distinct purpose of getting or grabbing your attention. Because otherwise, you probably would not listen or care or would never have known about a place called Ferguson if it wasn't some hollering and some screaming and some burning and some looting and some television cameras. Just like we would not have known about some of the things that were happening in the Deep South until CBS captured water hose being turned on innocent children who had enough courage in many cases to disobey their parents and not go to school and allow their innocence to be vulnerable in the attack of dogs and fire hoses. Most of us have never seen, this is the first time, at least in my generation, that we've actually begun to see the devastation that happens not only within the domestic side of this world, but internationally. And so it's not until we see the little boy and the bodies washing up on shore that we realize there's war and rumors of war going on around us. The scripture tells us that every day, but it's not until we hear the pain or the lament, which is people expressing their isness, hoping and echoing their oughtness, what ought to be. So to affirm something in someone requires this. It requires us to listen to them and seek to hear and see their humanity. I don't care how you feel about other things. I mentioned before that Jesus is an unconditional, God through Jesus Christ is an unconditional lover. If your love requires expectation or meeting of particular conditions, then you're not in line with Christ. I can't answer that question for you. You know what your limits are. Everybody's got some limits. I'm cool with everything, but we can have coffee hour as long as it's not in the sanctuary. Some of you have that church. Everything can come in here, but it starts off with coffee and coffee-colored people. Not to put Kay on the spot, but I didn't realize that in my spirit, this concept of getting their name became the root for affirmation for me. It's in the book, but this is how I came to understand the practice of affirming other people. I was in a situation, I'm a coffee drinker. I own stock in Starbucks. I've not actually put any money in the stock market to get money back from Starbucks, but I own stock in Starbucks. They know me. And I had a chance to go to the Willy Wonka factory of the coffee thing. That they have a roastery, which for me is like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It was like, wow. And but while I was in Seattle and doing some business with them and some other folks, I was in one of the area baristas. Actually, it was in the headquarters, and I wasn't confronted. I had an encounter. I had an opportunity to meet Jesus. And Jesus happened to have eyeliner, long fake eyelashes, flawless. I mean, Beyonce makeup presentation, about 6'3". And I'm sitting there the whole time after I order my drink trying to figure out. Is that a little shadow? What should I say? And one of my staff, my assistant, who's a millennial, who is like just way too smart for, she went to Harvard and all this other stuff. Wasting money, just smart for no reason. And very conscious, and grew up Methodist and left because people couldn't love her in the ways in which she needed and wanted and desired to be loved and express love, only to come back through the back door of the movement and the work that we were doing. She could see my problem. She could see something. She knew exactly what was going on, because I'm sitting there, You do it too. You got some stuff. It's kind of like the guy in the airport last night that had a baseball cap on, 2 cowboy hats, some cowboy boots, fitting jeans, and the world's littlest dog on a leash, walking down the airport back and forth. And we just all... Long story short, I was trying to find the words to say it. I tell it better in the book, but eventually I couldn't say, because my habit is yes sir and no ma'am and all this other false, fake church etiquette stuff. And finally I just said, when they handed me a coffee, I said, "What's your name?" And they said, "Shay." And I said, "Thank you, Shay." I walked away. Now, I don't know if Shay ever knew what my problem was and how Shay blessed my life, and then how my colleague and friend and assistant, Nikki, blessed me out in her intelligent, nice, Methodist way. But from that day forward, I made it a habit before I make assumptions about people, or if I don't understand, I'm going to ask, and I'm going to ask their name. Now, why does this make sense? And I know you're bored. I'm just trying to help you as preachers, because you're not going to remember half this stuff, and you're probably not going to read the book. So I at least need to give you a sermon for a Sunday coming soon, because that's why I come to stuff like this, to see if I can help me preach. I don't know all of Shay's story, but I do know her name. And that's enough, because I'm sure part of, and this is what my dear colleague explained to me, part of what I perceive to be the extreme aesthetic was no different than what is happening in my community with different people when they're yelling and screaming. It was to get and garner attention. And the very things you say I can't be, I'm going to claim. And I'm going to claim it if I have to do it with my hair, mama, twist, braided, not washed, combed for months on end. Or I'm going to do it with my talk and my walk. I'm going to make you love what I believe is me. That's what my sister said. That might be some of it. I don't know. But I got her name, or their name. And it reminded me of a story where everybody else had these assumptions about this brother and how he was such a dysfunction and a discouragement and a disappointment to his community because of what he was trying to wrestle with, that they banished him. And he decided to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because my clinical psychologist member tells me that there's no such thing as crazy. She says that people are over-realized or they over-realize or over-realistic, meaning that they internalize what others of us suppress or pretend it's not real. So if you feel a sense of anxiety, like I was on the plane last night when I went through turbulence, I coached myself through it by praying and convincing myself, God is with us. God, you are the God of the whole of the ship, where you were sitting there and said, peace be still to the winds. And they were still. And Lord, I need you to tell something to be still. And not just here, but I need you to do it in Florida. And I believe I'm the reason why Category 5 went to Category, because I prayed. Because I was afraid to acknowledge that if God didn't stop the winds, that maybe I was uncomfortable. There's some folk who are not afraid to acknowledge, I don't see God, I don't know this God you're talking about, I'm right here, right now, and I'm scared, or I'm anxious, or you've said this about me so long that I believe it. And so this brother said, okay, you think I'm dead, you think I'm useless, you think I'm of nobody, I'm going to go where nobodies go and where dead people go, and I'm going to do that, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to do what you've been doing to me for years, which is killing me softly, talking about me, killing me softly. I will just do it myself. This is the Gerasene demoniac. And what does Jesus do? Ask his name. 3 is the charm. What's his name? He gives all the labels that everybody else has given. Legion. No. What's your name? There's a whole bunch of stories about names. See, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, the reason they could stay in the fire, they didn't come out till they got called, I believe, in the spirit by their God-given names. See, the names they went in as were slave names. Their names of God had meaning and defining. It was a story to their names. There's depth of knowledge to their names. Can you name what's wrong in your community? I'm not talking about Mission Insight. No disrespect to the fine, data-driven, constituent-based information we have. When you go outside, when you walk in your community, does anybody know you? And do you know people other than the folk that sit in your pews? From the inside out, we grow church. And we do it by teaching people how to affirm. I'm going to stop here and read you one other thing. If you're listening to hollering, it sounds like this. Hollering or lament is not always vocal. It is physical as well. In their state of distress and grief, I'm on page 57, I'm sorry to insult you with reading, but the people of Ferguson didn't curl up in a corner. They took to chucking stuff. And as they did so, they were crying, and culturally traditional white Wesleyan spaces rarely practice lament. I'll just let you meditate on that. Following a presentation at a United Methodist Theological School on the East Coast, sorry, Bishop, I was asked by a young white seminarian, why don't white people understand hollering? Most folks see the world through a lens prescribed to their liking, orientated to their own point of view. Thus, many watched the events in Ferguson, and what registered with them was that those people were throwing things or rioting and blocking interstate traffic. The usual actions registered, but the pain behind the actions for many viewers did not. If your question is always, if you question what someone is doing all the time and not willing and wanting to ask maybe why they're doing something, that's the difference between moving from sympathy to empathy. That you want to know what's at the root of. Do you understand that that's how Jesus operated? In every situation of healing and transformation, or even in the situation I referenced with the Gerasene demoniac, he didn't ask why you're here. I mean, what you're doing here. Why and what led to you being here? Why are you so mad? Why won't you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Why do you get, and not only questioning the other, why don't you question yourself? Let me take this out of the realm of racial social consciousness. Can I talk to you as a pastor in the United Methodist Church? Anybody come out on Sunday and look in your audience and say, why am I here? Because nobody's here. The hardest question to ask yourself, I'm talking about me now. I've been here, maybe still here some days. I have found at the places when I want to challenge others is the place and at the point and with the questions I need to challenge myself. So part of being prophetic, and we talk about this in the book about being a prophetic ethical witness, being prophetic is not this falsehood about speaking truth to power alone. Okay? We're going to speak truth to power. That's not just that. It is about raising critique and consideration and question that you also remain answerable to yourself. So when I have been in points in my ministry frustrated by attendance or frustrated by the lack of effort or investment by others, and I say, I don't know why they're not here. Why are they not here? Why are they not stepping up? Why are they not doing nothing? The greatest revelation and conviction has come when I've asked that question of myself. Because truth be told, no matter how good I preach, and I don't preach that good, or no matter how much I think I work so tirelessly and long, which most of us, if we're honest, we're not working like that. We're busy. We're doing a lot of stuff. We're moving a lot of pieces. And that's not to insult anybody. I mean, I'm just talking about me and maybe, It's like when I go to the gym, you know, the 30-minute, 45-minute, hour workout is not, when I'm by myself, is not the same when I go to Orange Theory or with my trainer. I take a lot longer break. I meander to the next machine, and my pace isn't the same. My heart rate doesn't heighten like it does when I've got somebody watching me. And so the question I ask about why to others, I have to ask myself. And I found that my why, or the why in the situation, is probably what I'm not doing. You can be somewhere and still not have a good attitude. You can smile and people realize that it's not authentic. And so affirming is allowing yourself to speak truth to yourself. The prophets always spoke on behalf of people to God, and from God on behalf of people. And what they spoke and what they stood in judgment or stood responsible to do required something of them, and it probably impacted them just as much. That's why we celebrate Micah and people like of the 8th century prophetic tradition, because not only was Micah not an ordained person, wasn't called at birth like Jeremiah, but more importantly, Micah was in the same struggle and situation of the people. And Micah could hear their pain and could see their pain. So this is what we're going to do. You're going to turn around your table and you're going to make a very constructive list about what you hear and see in your community that is causing discomfort, leaving people vulnerable, and having them to react outwardly in some ways that politically, socially, whatever, may not be as understood or accepted. If it happens to be something of a national scope, that's fine, but I want you to really think about it. Don't talk about what's happening in Ferguson and Charlottesville. Y'all got enough stuff here in dairy country. It was this play on the milk. It was this, yeah. To figure out. Let's take about 10 minutes. Where are people crying? Where are people hollering? Where is their lament? And we'll talk about how you can begin to speak and affirm to that now that you've gotten this little bit of overview. Is that helpful? Is that cool?